December 23, 2019, Seoul, South Korea. A black woman stood trembling in the snow outside an expensive restaurant. Through the frosted windows, she could see her employers, a wealthy Korean family, laughing, eating, warming themselves by the fireplace. She had been their maid for 3 years. She had cooked their meals, cleaned their home, raised their children. But when they went to dinner that night, they told her to wait outside, in the snow, in freezing temperatures. Because they didn't want to be seen with her, what they didn't know was that someone was watching, someone powerful, someone who would make them pay for what they did. This is the story of Grace Okonkwo, and the Korean mafia boss who became her unlikely protector. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been treated like you don't matter because of the color of your skin, this story is for you. Hit that like button right now, subscribe to Truly Black and White, and get ready for one of the most shocking stories of justice you'll hear today. Because what happened next will restore your faith that sometimes karma has a face. And sometimes that face belongs to the most unexpected person. Grace Okonkwo was 34 years old when this story begins. She was born in Lagos, Nigeria, the youngest of 5 children. Her father was a taxi driver. Her mother sold fruit at the market. Grace was smart, really smart. She had dreams of becoming a nurse. She studied hard in school, got good grades, and won a scholarship to nursing school in Port Harcourt. But then her father got sick, cancer. The treatments were expensive. Her family couldn't afford them and pay for her education at the same time. Grace made a choice. She dropped out of nursing school and got a job to help pay for her father's medical bills. Her father survived. Grace was grateful, but her dream of becoming a nurse, that dream was gone. By the time Grace was 28, her father had passed away from natural causes. Her siblings had their own families to take care of. Her mother was getting older and needed support. Grace heard about opportunities to work abroad as a domestic helper. The pay was much better than anything she could earn in Nigeria. She could send money home to her mother, maybe even save enough to go back to school someday. A recruitment agency in Lagos specialized in placing African women in homes across Asia, Hong Kong, Singapore, Dubai, and South Korea. South Korea is good, the recruiter told her. The families are wealthy. They treat helpers well, you'll make good money. Grace signed a 2-year contract. In March 2017, she boarded a plane to Seoul, South Korea. She was nervous but hopeful. This was her chance to build a better life. Grace was placed with the Park family. Mr. Park Min-jun was a successful real estate developer. Mrs. Park Jae-won came from old money. Her family owned luxury hotels across South Korea. They lived in Gangnam, one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Seoul, in a massive apartment that cost more than most people would earn in 10 lifetimes. 4 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, marble everything. The Parks had 2 children, a 12-year-old son named Tae-hyun and a 9-year-old daughter named Min-seo. When Grace first arrived, Mrs. Park looked her up and down with an expression Grace couldn't quite read. Not quite disgust, not quite curiosity. Something in between. You speak English? Mrs. Park asked in heavily accented English. Yes, ma'am, very well, Grace replied politely. Good, the children need to practice English. You will help them with homework. You will also cook, clean, do laundry, and take care of the children when we are out. Of course, ma'am. Mrs. Park paused. One more thing, when we have guests over, you will stay in your room. We don't want confusion. Grace didn't understand what she meant by confusion, but she nodded. She needed this job. Grace's room was tiny, smaller than a closet, really. No window, just a narrow bed, a small dresser, and a lamp. But it was hers, and it was clean. She could make this work. The first few months were hard. Grace worked from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. every single day. She woke up before the family, prepared breakfast, got the children ready for school, cleaned the entire apartment, did the laundry, shopped for groceries, cooked dinner, helped with homework, and put the children to bed. She got 1 day off per month, 1 day, but Grace didn't complain. She sent money home to her mother every month. She was doing what she came here to do. The children, Tae-hyun and Min-seo, actually liked Grace. She was kind to them. She read them stories in English. She played games with them. She made them laugh. Tae-hyun once asked her, Grace, why is your skin so dark? Grace smiled gently. Because God made me this way. Just like he made your skin lighter, we're all different, and that's beautiful. I think it's cool, Tae-hyun said. You look like a chocolate princess. Grace laughed. Thank you, Tae-hyun. That's very sweet, but Mr. and Mrs. Park were different. They were never cruel exactly, but they were cold, distant. They spoke to Grace only to give orders. They never asked how she was doing. never thanked her for the endless hours she worked, and there were small things, things that stung. When the family ate dinner together, Grace ate alone in the kitchen, not at the same time, after they were done, and she wasn't allowed to eat the same food. She got the leftovers or plain rice with vegetables. When relatives visited, Grace had to stay in her room. Mrs. Park didn't want her to be seen. Once, Mrs. Park's mother came to visit. She saw Grace in the hallway and said something in Korean. Grace didn't speak Korean well yet, but she understood enough to know it wasn't kind. Mrs. Park responded also in Korean, and they both laughed. Grace felt her face burn with shame. She went to her room and cried quietly so no one would hear, but she stayed because she needed the money, because her mother depended on her, because she had signed a contract. This was her life. This was her reality. And then came December 23, 2019. Mr. Park was closing a major real estate deal. He had been working on it for months, a massive commercial development in downtown Seoul that would make him even wealthier than he already was. To celebrate, he planned a dinner at one of Seoul's most exclusive restaurants, Jumsujeong, which literally means Golden Tower. This wasn't just any restaurant. This was where the ultra-wealthy went to see and be seen. Where business deals were sealed over $500 bottles of wine, where reservation lists were months long. Mr. Park had invited his business partners, their wives, and a few important investors. It was going to be a big night. On the morning of December 23rd, Mrs. Park told Grace, "You're coming with us tonight." Grace was surprised. She had never been invited anywhere with the family before. "To the dinner, ma'am?" "Yes." "The children are coming and they'll need supervision. You'll take care of them during the dinner." Grace's heart sank a little. Of course, she wasn't being invited as a guest. She was being brought along to work. "Yes, ma'am." Of course, that evening, Grace dressed in the nicest clothes she owned, a simple black dress and a warm coat. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean and presentable. The Park family was dressed in designer clothes. Mrs. Park wore a dress that probably cost more than Grace's entire year's salary. The children looked like they had stepped out of a fashion magazine. They all got into the family's black Mercedes and drove to Jumsujeong. The restaurant was beautiful, warm lighting, elegant decor, soft music playing in the background. Grace could smell expensive perfume and even more expensive food. As they approached the entrance, Mrs. Park turned to Grace. "Wait here," Grace blinked. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Wait outside. We'll call you if we need you." "But it's very cold tonight, ma'am." Mrs. Park's expression didn't change. "We cannot bring you inside. It would be inappropriate. Our business partners are very traditional. They wouldn't understand why we brought someone like you, someone like you." The words hit Grace like a slap. "Wait out here. If the children need something, we'll come get you," Mrs. Park said, as if it was the most reasonable thing in the world. And then the Park family walked into the warm, glowing restaurant. The door closed behind them. Grace stood there alone in the freezing December night. It was 22 degrees Fahrenheit that night, below freezing. Snow had started to fall earlier in the day, and now it was coming down steadily. Grace pulled her coat tighter around herself. It wasn't thick enough for this kind of cold. She hadn't expected to be standing outside. She looked through the restaurant's large windows. She could see the Park family inside, being greeted warmly by their guests. Everyone was smiling, shaking hands. A waiter poured champagne. The children, Taehyun and Minseo, sat at the table looking bored but comfortable. Grace's fingers were starting to go numb. She tucked her hands into her coat pockets and shifted her weight from foot to foot, trying to stay warm. Minutes passed, then an hour. The snow kept falling. Grace's feet were freezing. Her face stung from the cold wind. Her teeth chattered. She could see the family eating now, course after course, beautiful plates of food. The children were eating too. No one looked toward the window. No one thought about the woman standing outside in the snow. Grace felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them away. She wouldn't cry. She wouldn't, but she felt something else, something heavier than sadness. She felt invisible. After 3 years of working for this family, after raising their children, cleaning their home, cooking their meals, sacrificing her own dreams, she was standing outside in the freezing cold because they were ashamed to be seen with her. Because her skin was dark, Grace thought about her mother back in Lagos. She thought about her father who had worked so hard to give his children a better life. She thought about the dreams she used to have, and she wondered, was this really all she was worth? Another hour passed. Grace's body was shaking now, not just from the cold but from exhaustion. Her legs hurt from standing for so long. A few other people walked past her on their way into the restaurant. They looked at her, this black woman standing alone in the snow, and then quickly looked away. No one asked if she was okay. No one offered help. She was invisible to them too. Inside the restaurant, the Park family was laughing, celebrating, warm and full and happy. Outside, Grace was freezing, alone, forgotten, and then everything changed. A black car pulled up in front of the restaurant. Not just any car, a Bentley Continental GT, sleek and menacing. 3 men stepped out. They were all wearing expensive suits, but there was something about them that felt dangerous. The way they moved. The way they looked around, alert and watchful. The man in the center was tall for a Korean man, maybe Sixon. He was in his early 40s with sharp features, slick-back black hair, and a scar that ran from his left eyebrow to his cheekbone. He wore a long black wool coat that probably cost more than most people's cars. His name was Minwoo Kang, and he was not a businessman, not officially anyway. Minwoo Kang was a high-ranking member of the Sangmunpa, one of Seoul's most powerful organized crime syndicates. They controlled gambling operations, nightclubs, protection rackets, and various businesses throughout the city. Kang wasn't the top boss, but he was close. He was what they called an enforcer, someone who made sure things ran smoothly. Someone people feared. He had a reputation. If you crossed Kang, you disappeared. If you owed Kang money, you paid or you regretted it. He was ruthless, calculating, and utterly without mercy when it came to business. But there was something else about Kang that most people didn't know, something that made him different from the other gangsters. Kang believed in respect, not just respect for power, but respect for people, all people. His own mother had been a cleaning woman who worked multiple jobs to raise him and his 2 sisters after his father abandoned them. She had been treated like dirt by the wealthy families she worked for, looked down on, disrespected. Kang remembered watching his mother come home exhausted, her hands raw from scrubbing floors, her eyes empty from years of being treated as less than human. When Kang joined the Sangmunpa as a teenager, he made himself a promise. He would never treat working people the way his mother had been treated. So on this cold December night, when Kang stepped out of his Bentley and saw a black woman standing alone in the snow, shivering while everyone else was warm inside the restaurant, something inside him snapped. He stopped. His 2 bodyguards stopped with him. "Wait here," Kang said to them in Korean. He walked over to Grace. She looked up at him, startled. Her face was red from the cold. Her lips had a slight blue tinge. "How long have you been standing out here?" Kang asked in English. His English was excellent. He had done business internationally for years. Grace hesitated. She wasn't sure who this man was, but something about him was intimidating. A few hours, sir. A few hours in this weather." "Yes, sir." "Why?" Grace swallowed. "I work for a family inside. They told me to wait out here." Kang's jaw tightened. "They're eating inside?" "Yes, sir." "And they left you out here in the snow?" Grace nodded, not trusting herself to speak. Kang looked at her for a long moment, then he looked through the restaurant window. He could see the Park family and their guests laughing and drinking. His eyes went cold, dead cold. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Grace, sir. Grace Okonkwo." "Grace," Kang repeated. "You're going to come inside with me now?" "Oh no, sir, I couldn't. They told me to wait out here." "I don't care what they told you," Kang interrupted, his voice harder now. "No one stands in the snow while others feast inside." "Come." It wasn't a request, it was an order. Grace, too cold and too tired to argue, followed him. Kang walked into Jumsujeong like he owned the place, which in a way he did. The restaurant paid protection money to the Sangmunpa every month. The restaurant manager saw him immediately and went pale. "Mr. Kang? We didn't know you were coming tonight." "I wasn't planning to," Kang said coldly, "but I changed my mind." He walked directly to the Park family's table, Grace following hesitantly behind him. The Parks were in the middle of a toast when Kang appeared. Mr. Park looked up, confused at first, then alarmed when he recognized who was standing there. Everyone at the table went silent. "Mr. Park," Kang said quietly. "Dangerously quiet, Mr. Kang," Mr. Park stammered, standing quickly. "What a surprise. We had no idea you would be here tonight." "I wasn't," Kang interrupted. "I was coming here for my own dinner. But then I saw something outside that interested me." He gestured to Grace, who stood behind him, still shivering. "Do you know this woman?" Kang asked. Mr. Park's face flushed. She works for us." "Our housekeeper?" "Your housekeeper," Kang repeated slowly. "And where has your housekeeper been for the past 2.5 hours while you've been enjoying this meal?" The table was completely silent now. Everyone was watching. Mrs. Park spoke up, her voice defensive. She was waiting outside in case the children needed her. Outside, Kang said, his voice dropping even lower, in the snow, in freezing temperatures. For 2.5 hours. We couldn't bring her inside, Mrs. Park said quickly. It would have been inappropriate. Inappropriate? Kang's voice exploded through the restaurant. Every head turned, even the waiters froze. What's inappropriate? Kang said, his voice shaking with rage now. Is making another human being stand in the freezing cold while you stuff your faces in here. What's inappropriate is treating someone like garbage because of the color of their skin. Mr. Park's face went from red to white. Mr. Kang, please, you're misunderstanding. I'm not misunderstanding anything, Kang roared. I understand perfectly. You brought this woman here to watch your children, and then you made her wait outside like a dog because you were embarrassed to be seen with her. Sir, please, Mrs. Park tried to speak, but Kang cut her off. My mother was a cleaning woman, Kang said, his voice now dangerously quiet again. She worked for people like you, rich people, people who thought they were better than her because they had money, people who treated her like she was invisible. Like she didn't matter. He stepped closer to the table. I swore I would never let anyone treat working people the way my mother was treated. And here I find this woman who works for you, who takes care of your children, who cooks your food and cleans your house, standing outside in the snow like a piece of furniture you didn't want to bring inside. Kang turned to his bodyguards. Get her a chair now. One of them immediately grabbed a chair from a nearby table and brought it over. Sit, Kang said gently to Grace. Sir, sit. Grace sat. She was trembling, but not just from the cold anymore. Kang turned back to the Parks. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to order Grace the best meal this restaurant has. You're going to make sure she's warm and comfortable. And you're going to apologize to her. Mr. Kang, Mr. Park said desperately, you don't understand our situation. I understand perfectly, Kang said coldly. And here's what else I understand, your real estate deal. The one you're celebrating tonight, the commercial development downtown. Mr. Park's eyes widened. That land is in territory controlled by the Sangmunpa, Kang continued, which means any development on that land requires our approval that can be given or withdrawn. The color drained from Mr. Park's face. Mr. Kang, please apologize to her, Kang said. Now, Mr. Park turned to Grace. His voice was stiff, humiliated. We apologize for any inconvenience. Not good enough, Kang said. A real apology. Look her in the eye. Mr. Park swallowed hard. He looked at Grace. Grace, I'm sorry. We shouldn't have made you wait outside. It was wrong. Grace stared at him, stunned. Mrs. Park looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. Better, Kang said. He snapped his fingers and a waiter appeared instantly. Bring this lady the chef's special tasting menu. The full course and hot tea immediately. Yes, Mr. Kang. The waiter scurried away. Kang pulled out his phone and made a call. He spoke in rapid Korean, then hung up. He turned back to Mr. Park. I just called my associate at the immigration office. Grace's work visa will be transferred to a new employer by the end of the week. She'll no longer work for you. What? Mrs. Park gasped. She'll work for one of our legitimate businesses, a restaurant we own in Itaewon, better pay, actual days off, and she'll be treated with respect. He looked at Grace. If you want the job, Grace's eyes filled with tears. Yes, she whispered. Yes, sir, thank you, Kang nodded. Then he turned back to the Parks one last time. One more thing, he said quietly. If I ever hear that you've treated anyone else the way you treated Grace tonight, your real estate deal won't just be delayed. It will be destroyed, and so will your reputation. Do we understand each other? Mr. Park nodded frantically. Yes, Mr. Kang, we understand. Good. Kang turned and walked to his own table on the other side of the restaurant. His bodyguards followed. Grace sat there in shock as a waiter appeared with hot tea and blankets to warm her up. The Park family sat in humiliated silence, unable to leave, unable to speak, their celebration ruined. And across the restaurant, Minwoo Kang ordered his meal, satisfied. The story didn't end that night. Within 3 days, just as Kang had promised, Grace's work visa was transferred. She packed her few belongings from the Park's apartment and moved into a small but comfortable apartment provided by Kang's organization. She started working at Hibangcheon Kitchen, a Korean fusion restaurant in Itaewon, one of Seoul's most diverse neighborhoods. The restaurant was a legitimate business owned by the Sangmunpa, and it was run professionally. Grace's new job was completely different from her life with the Parks. She worked regular hours, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. She got 2 full days off every week. She was paid double what the Parks had paid her. And most importantly, she was treated with respect. The restaurant manager, a kind woman named Mrs. Choi, welcomed Grace warmly. "Mr. Kang told us about you. He said you're a hard worker and you deserve better than what you've had." "We're happy to have you here," Grace cried when she heard those words. She couldn't remember the last time someone had said they were happy to have her. She worked in the restaurant's prep kitchen, helping prepare ingredients, learning Korean cooking techniques, and assisting the chefs. The work was hard, but it was honest work, and the other staff treated her like a colleague, not a servant. One evening, about 2 weeks after the incident at Jumsujeong, Kang came to the restaurant. Grace saw him enter and immediately felt nervous. She still wasn't sure what to make of this man who had defended her so fiercely. Kang noticed her and walked over. "How are you settling in?" he asked. "Very well, Mr. Kang, thank you." "I don't know how to repay you for what you've done." "You don't owe me anything," Kang interrupted. "What happened that night was wrong. I only did what anyone with a conscience should do." "But why?" Grace asked quietly. "Why did you help me? You didn't know me." Kang was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My mother worked herself to death cleaning houses for people who treated her like she was invisible. When she died, I was 16 years old. I made a promise at her funeral that I would never let anyone be treated the way she was treated, not if I could stop it." His eyes met Grace's. "I saw my mother standing in that snow. And I couldn't walk past." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "Your mother raised a good man." Kang smiled slightly, a rare expression on his usually stern face. "She tried. I don't know if she succeeded, but I try to honor her memory." He handed Grace an envelope. "This is for you, your first month's bonus." Grace opened it. Inside was more money than she had made in 6 months working for the parks. "Mr. Kang, this is too much." "It's not. You've worked hard for years and been paid barely enough to survive. This is what you should have been earning all along." Grace didn't know what to say. She just bowed deeply, the way she had learned Korean people show respect. Thank you so much." Kang nodded and turned to leave, but Grace called out to him, "Mr. Kang, what happened to the parks?" "To their business deal." Kang looked back at her. "Their development project has been delayed indefinitely. There were some complications with permits. These things happen." There was a glint in his eye that told Grace the complications were no accident. They also had to pay a rather large fine to the immigration office for violations of their domestic helper contract. Apparently, they weren't following labor laws properly. Mrs. Choi's brother works in that office and he's very thorough with his inspections. Grace felt a surge of satisfaction. "Good, yes," Kang agreed. "Good." He paused at the door. "Grace, you're a skilled woman. You told me you studied nursing before you had to work to support your family." "Yes, sir, but I never finished." "Would you want to finish if you could?" Grace's heart leaped. "More than anything, then we'll make it happen. I know people at Yonsei University. They have an excellent nursing program. I'll make some calls." Grace stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. "Mr. Kang, I couldn't possibly." "You can, and you will. You'll work at the restaurant to support yourself and you'll study part-time. In a few years, you'll be Nurse Grace Okonkwo. How does that sound?" Grace couldn't speak. She was crying too hard. She just nodded. Kang smiled again. "Good. That's settled then?" And he walked out into the Seoul night. It's December 2022. 3 years have passed since that night in the snow. Grace Okonkwo stands in her small apartment in Itaewon putting on her uniform. But it's not a maid's uniform anymore. It's a nurse's uniform. She graduated from Yonsei University's nursing program 6 months ago. She now works at Severance Hospital, one of the best hospitals in Seoul, in the emergency department. She still can't quite believe it sometimes. She, Grace Okonkwo from Lagos, Nigeria, is a registered nurse in South Korea. She sends money home to her mother every month, much more than she could before. She saved enough to bring her mother to Seoul for a visit next spring. She has friends now, real friends, Korean friends, Nigerian friends, friends from all over the world. Itaewon is a diverse neighborhood and Grace has found a community there. She still works part-time at Hibangshan Kitchen on her days off from the hospital, not because she needs the money, but because she loves it. The restaurant feels like family now, and Minwoo Kang, she sees him occasionally. He still comes to the restaurant sometimes for dinner. They don't talk much. Kang is a private man, but there's a mutual respect between them. Last year, on the anniversary of that night in the snow, Grace baked a cake and brought it to Kang's table. "Thank you," she said simply, "for everything." Kang had looked at the cake, then at her, and nodded. "You earned it, Grace, all of it. I just opened a door. You're the one who walked through it and built something." Grace heard through the restaurant staff that Kang had donated a substantial amount of money to a scholarship fund for African students studying in South Korea. He never announced it publicly, he never took credit for it, but Grace knew. As for the Park family, Grace heard they left Seoul. The scandals, the labor violations, the failed business deal, the story of what happened at Jumsujeong, which spread quickly through Seoul's elite social circles, had destroyed their reputation. Mr. Park's business collapsed. They had to sell their apartment in Gangnam and move to a smaller city. The last Grace heard, Mrs. Park was working as a real estate agent, a dramatic fall from her previous life of luxury. Grace felt a small bit of satisfaction when she heard that. Not because she enjoyed their suffering, but because justice had been served. They had learned that actions have consequences. That you can't treat people as less than human without paying a price. The children, Taehyun and Min Seo, were the only ones Grace felt sorry for. They hadn't done anything wrong, they were just kids. She hoped they would learn from their parents' mistakes, that they would grow up to be better people. On this particular December evening, Grace is heading to work the night shift at the hospital. As she walks through the snowy streets of Seoul, she thinks about how far she's come. 3 years ago, she was standing in the same snow, freezing, invisible, forgotten. Now she's walking through it with her head held high, on her way to save lives. She thinks about Minwoo Kang, about how one person's moment of rage at injustice had changed her entire life. She thinks about the Parks who had treated her as less than human and lost everything because of it. And she thinks about herself. About the girl from Lagos who dreamed of being a nurse. About the woman who almost gave up on that dream. About the survivor who found a way to make it come true after all. Grace smiles as the snow falls around her. She's not invisible anymore. She never was. She just needed someone to see her, and someone did. Sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes karma has a face, and sometimes that face belongs to someone the world calls a villain. Minwoo Kang was a gangster. A criminal, a man who did terrible things in the name of business and power, but he was also a son who remembered his mother's pain. A man who couldn't walk past injustice, even when it would have been easier to look away. We're all complicated, we're all capable of both darkness and light. The question is, which will we choose when the moment comes? If this story gave you chills, smash that like button right now. Tell us in the comments. Have you ever witnessed someone stand up for a stranger when no one else would? What's the most unexpected act of kindness you've ever seen? And of course, subscribe to Truly Black and White for more incredible true stories of justice, courage, and humanity. Because these stories matter, these voices matter. Remember, we all have the power to stand up when we see injustice. The question is, will we? Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next story.